I want to show how to do a cloth structure that I developed myself last night, and I've knitted a little bit more of it here today to kind of get my hand in, and I wanted to show a few things. The first thing, and it's really important, is that you can easily switch back and forth between seeing, as it were, this face, which is your stocking stitch face, and seeing your reverse, which is the purl, by simply moving the needles. And that's really important for this structure and using this structure, because this structure of tuck stitch and eyelets is built onto the reverse side, on the purl side, and that's typical of tuck stitch. Tuck stitch doesn't look like anything on the other side. All you'd see on this side would be the holes. But because you can switch faces so easily rather than having to turn the whole cloth around, that means that you can choose when to put this sort of motif into an otherwise stockinette, garter, ribbed, what have you. You can enter into this very, very easily. So I'm going to do some rows of switching back and forth, and then when we get to doing this, the tuck and eyelet, the tuck is this and the eyelet is this, I'll discuss it as I go, okay? And it'll be kind of a longish video, so just relax. Let me get us settled here. I thought I was missing about a mile of... Okay. I'm going to come back out of what I've been doing, and I'm just going to knit 2 rows of stockinette on the back bed. This is the back bed, the one away from me. And it is the one that is like Japanese flatbed knitting machines, with or without the ribber. So if you just pretended this wasn't here, this front bed, you realize that this orientation is one that most of us that knit a bit are quite used to. So let's... I was coming out of this fancy stitch pattern, so I need to make sure that everything knits. And that's 2 rows. Let's do 3. So that's 3 rows. Now, if on almost any other machine I wanted to reverse which side I was going to see, and again by that what I mean is this toward me or that toward me? Right now that's toward me, okay? If I wanted to switch that, I'd have to get out a good old garter bar and switch it around, okay? Not so with the Hamanaka. With the Hamanaka, I just switch beds, because you remember I have 2 hooks. So I'm just going to start using these hooks. And there's 3 rows. There are 3 rows. And then I just move back. Do it again. I want a few rows of this so that you can see. And then I'm also leading up to something that needs to be discussed. So let's see what we've made. And it doesn't look like much. Let's back up. Sometimes things look better from a distance. And you can see there that it's alternating faces, just as this is. But that was 5 rows in between, and this is just 3, 3, 3. Okay? So I could have done that. I could have done ribbing. I could have done basket weave. I could have done garter. I could have done any stitch my heart desired. Any stitch my heart desired. But if I want to go into this as a panel or a decorative motif along the chest area of a cardigan, a faux, the thing that occurs to me is a faux, gosh, what's that stuff called, where they embroider on top of the cloth drawn together, with used to be little girls' dresses. Anyway, we'll do one, okay? If you want to go into this, you need to be on the back bed. So let's go to the back bed. You need to be on the back bed for 2 reasons. One is that it is on the back bed where it's the purl side that's facing you, and so you can put this work, smocking is what I was trying to remember. If you wanted to do faux smocking, this would work, and you could run ribbons through there the way that they used to, where they would do the eyelets with the sewing machines. That would actually be, I think I'll do that. Anyway, it is on the back bed that you need to have these stitches, which are the same as these, they're your purl stitches, in order to put the tuck on it. Also, I want to show you something here. I just came off the front bed. You remember I pushed these back. And do you see where the latches are? They're in front of the stitches. I don't want them there. I want them on top of, I want the latches on top of the stitches. So I'm going to do row. And do you see now the stitch, where are you? The stitch is sitting on top of the latch. The reason I want that is because in doing transfers for decreases, eyelets, anything where you're moving stitches from one needle to another, it's much easier if you have done at least 1 row of back bed work, and then if you can do it the other way, but it is much easier, and you'll see me just doing this over and over with the eyelets. But what I want to point out is you would do the same thing for knit 2 together decreases. Okay, let's go on and put another here just so it gets over to the right hand side. All right, now let's look at what I am knitting. I did this last night, charted it and knitted it, and it was for a narrower piece of cloth. But I've already practiced on this one, and I've worked out that, you know, how many repeats it is, and it'll work. I'll just have to do more of these center ones, these diamonds, than I did last night. That's not a problem. What the chart, you read, when I write a chart, the way you're going to read it is you read it from the bottom right across. Then you can come back if you wish to. I tend to not. I tend to read right to left, right to left, right to left, right to left, but it makes no difference whatsoever. This one works out because it's not being joined. If it were being joined, do you see that bottom that's of a diamond? It's like the large half of the diamond. It's the same over here. You would leave that row out. That's absolutely typical with stranded work, what a lot of you call ferrule, regardless of what it is. Weaving in overshot work, anything that, tartan weaving, anything where it's charted out like this, see if the end is the same as the beginning, and if it is, leave out the end till you get to the end, and until you keep. And if you keep going and you're going to sew them together or whatever, leave that out so that it can go continuously. And you don't have two of these at the bottom. So let's begin. What the chart means is leave the needle alone if it's blank, bring it into non-working position so that it'll tuck if it's an X, and do an eyelet if it's a dot. So the first row is, I don't know how to do an inset, or I do an inset, so you don't have to believe me. The first row is that I leave the first needle alone, and then I pull this needle into non-working position. This was my eureka moment. I was reading about short rows, and that'll allow me to make the little dress and a world of things with short rows. I was reading about short rows, and it said to put needles into non-working position, and I had tuck stitch on my mind, and I realized if we did non-working position, it's like hold, and that means that it won't knit. The stitch will just go over it, and then when I put it back into working position, it will knit, and that's a tuck stitch. Okay, period. That's by definition a tuck stitch. It doesn't matter how you get it to not knit. Now, I'm going to back up so that you can just watch me work across the... Okay, here we go. I have found in doing this that it's easier for me to do all of the needles and then the eyelets, not needle, eyelet, needle, eyelet. So I read the row twice. So there are 5 needles in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Non-working position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Non-working position. And it worked out because the penultimate needle, the next to the last needle, is in non-working position on this side, just as it is on this side, with 5 working needles in between each one. I actually wouldn't do an eyelet. Let me show you. I did here. But if I were doing this for real and for certain, on that first row I wouldn't do eyelets unless I was going to run ribbon through that or something. But for a patterning, I probably would leave those eyelets out and start the eyelets in the middle of a diamond rather than on a half diamond. However, let's go on and do the transfers. This is just like a decrease, so you can use the same procedure. The transfer is done on the 5 needles in between. It's done on the middle needle. When you are doing patterns like this, whenever you can, unless you have a design reason or a structural reason, in other words, unless you have a good reason to work in even numbers, work in odds. Odds give you a center. If there were 4 in between, I wouldn't have a middle needle. I'd have 2 middle needles or no middle needle, okay? So I worked in 5s. I pull forward with this little tool. Any transfer tool will do, but this is a nice one. I go back, and the stitch pops onto the transfer tool. I leave that needle alone, okay? It is not time to be messing with that needle. I then pull forward and drop the stitch into the hook of the adjacent needle. I then put this back in place. Let's look at this up close and personal. Now that you've seen it once from a distance. Okay. Here we go. Let me find a number. Are you looking at the middle one? No. We're going to move. We're going to have, the goal is to have a needle with no stitch on it, and the adjacent needle has 2, but you leave that needle in place so that it will begin knitting again. And that's how you form an eyelet in machine knitting, that just period. I am still working out in my head. I'm thinking of Misty right now, who asks this question constantly because she's a little bit uptight like I am. Does it matter which way you transfer the stitch? I don't know if it will look different, and I don't feel like monkeying with it right now, so I'm going to go to the left each time. But this is something that I also am going to experiment with. If I were hand knitting, I would definitely work on the slant, okay, of the decreases. And this is a form of a decrease. It's a knit two together. It's just that I'm doing something else with it. So I do think that it matters. It's just that my head's not there right now. Anyway, this is how you do it. Remember, the stitches are not behind the latches. I'm going to show you what you do on the next one if they are. Pull forward so it goes behind the latch. Go back. Get that stitch, leave the needle alone. Pull this one forward. The original stitch is in the hook. Go over, drop the new stitch into the hook as well. Put everything back in working position, and I go on and open the latch. So now we have a naked needle and a needle with 2 stitches. Now, let's get over here and do another one. Where's the next one? Here. Can you see? Yeah, okay. Let's pretend, for fun, that you've been knitting a different way, and the stitch is behind the latch on the needle where you want to move the this stitch. It's not a problem. There are 2 ways to do this, and you'll figure it out. There's kind of a hokey pokey you can do. You need to, actually, let's do it the better way. If you do it the wrong way, you can fix it. Go back onto your donor needle, okay? Pull forward and tip that one into the hook. So now you've put it in the position you want it to be, which is that the latch is under the stitch rather than ahead of the stitch relative to you. Now we can do. This is what I fought with the Hamanaka, is I didn't really realize that I didn't have to have stitches behind the latch. And then sometimes stitches are behind the latch, and I didn't realize that I could just move it, even manually, the way that I'm doing now, and correct it so that I could make this easy transfer. And I did some hard transfers. I'm thinking of Carolyn now, who did some hard transfers as well. And life, at least on this front, is now easier for me and for Carolyn. This is not fast work. Do it for something you like or somebody you love. It will, though, if you do some of this, you'll be good at your hand tool handling. So it's like a little training session, if nothing else. I'll see if I can fix that shadow in a minute. I've got another light. Okay. Now let's back up. Let me see if I can help the shadows. That might help. Okay. And now knit 2 rows. Let's see what we have. The needle that was in non-working position has 2 rows of non-knitted on top of the original stitch that was there when I pushed it into non-working position. Meanwhile, the needle from which we stole a stitch has gained a stitch, and the needle to which we donated a stitch is now just back down to 1 because it knitted the 2 together. We breathe a sigh of relief. We are glad that we are on a non-eyelet row, and we read. And I'm going to just move it. Okay, so there's the pattern. I'm using a post-it to mark it. So I need to move over 1, have 3 needles in working position, and then have that non-working, working, non-working. So it's going to be 3, 1, 3, 1. You just look for patterns, especially if somebody lets you see the pattern. Okay, so I'm going to put this in, bring this one out, bring that one out, bring that one out, bring that one out. And put that one in. Okay, and there's my pattern. I've done it correctly over here, just take my word for it. But have I done it correctly here? Hang on. Aha. I'm glad I showed you because I was wrong. Now we're correct. And let's look at it. 2, 1 out, 3, 1 out, 1, 1, 3. Gosh, I can't count. There. Okay, yes. Sorry about that. Now, let's see if I can do it a little bit more impressively. This time, you see how the needles are starting to float? That is typical of this. Okay, and I think I've got a drop stitch because I just felt one pull, but we'll pick that up later. Now I put this in, bring this out, bring that out, and they're going to be 3, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 3. And at this point, we're to that row that has eyelets. And so I will do that row. But let's see what we've done. We've dropped a stitch. So that's easily picked up. And all I'm going to do right now, I'm not going to worry about that stitch, except I'm going to stop it from running anymore by stabbing a coilless safety pin through it. And then you can see the beginning of the pattern of the other is working. Okay. let's do this one row back together, then I'll do some more and show the picture later or something. It won't matter, you've gotten the point, but we need to go through this one more time because you start to get into, as you get more and more build up there, can you see how that needle is floating? Okay, so I want to show you how to deal with that. So right now, my pattern is, I'm going to push all these in. One, two, three, four, and this one that's sticking way up is the one that comes out all the way across. Okay, and then we also need to do eyelets. So let's make sure we've got 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and then 4 on the end, and that's correct. And then our eyelets are one over here. So back, forward, and onto the hook. Back, forward, and under the hook, and I will do the same thing all the way across. So it's allow me to work without feeling like an octopus hanging over the and then one right over here. Yeah, you can still see me. Okay, now let's look here. If I start to knit, I'm going to get there, I'm going to hit that needle. So what I want to do, because it's just floating up there, it's got so much cloth on either side that it's being pushed forward. What I want to do is I want to push it down. That's Hazel. Hazel likes to get up on the front and then call her mother, even though she knows exactly where her mother is. Okay. Now that I've kind of gotten it forward, and now back. Always easier back. And then I will continue to do row after row, but it's going to look identical to this, so you get already, let's see if I can put something back behind that. See there? That's the pattern. I want to discuss my sample, my swatch, whatever, from last night very briefly because I wanted to emphasize some things and point out some things. Normally, unless you move the cloth and turn it around on the machine, your entire cloth is like this with or without tuck, because you need to be on the purl side, because that is what tuck stitch looks like on the knit side. It looks like nothing. You can't see it. The little extra stitches are carried across on the purl side. With the Hamanaka, because just by moving needles on the beds, you can go in and out of different structures. You can do something as simple as surround your insert, as it were, of patterning with stockinette. You could also have ribbing here, you could have garter here, you could have basket weave, you could have anything you wanted, and that's not the case with most machines. Here, I alternated going in and out just by moving the needles, and it's a cool effect anyway. And also, if you knit something that was for sideways purposes, you get pleating, and that's pretty cool too. So this isn't important. It's not just to get tuck stitch, which is nice, and I'm glad that I developed it. I'm pretty pleased with myself. But it also brings out some of the strengths of the Hamanaka that I don't think have been discussed at all ever, and were discussed in the context of the prior purls. I also have prior purls, but those were difficult machines. They're rare as could be, and I can show how to use those, but the Hamanaka is actually slightly more available than the prior purls, and nobody discusses those either. So here we go. It's kind of a wake-up moment for, you can see I was playing and working with it, a wake-up moment for Hamanaka use.